what if it happens to me? What if it happens to us? Well, it did happen. Today on The Pulse, my guest is a very special person, personally to me in my life. I mean, all guests are special. But today on The Pulse, my wife Heather has joined me, and we're going to talk about Autism Spectrum Disorder. Welcome.
Thank you.
So we have a beautiful princess. Her name is Paige.
Yes.
And now she's 3.5 years old. So when did it hit you as a mom that something was different with our princess?
So this is funny. When I was pregnant, I was always praying, constantly praying to have a healthy child. I remember those days praying to have a healthy child, and I had the concern of autism in particular, because I know that many families, it's just have been some, I don't know if it's just more awareness now or it's now being like more rampant, but I did have that fear. So I remember going to my doctor's appointments, and there were different markers that the gynecologist was checking for, and there was one in particular for
Down syndrome.
And the doctor was like, no, it's like 1 in whatever number. And I don't particularly know that there was anything for autism, but I just know that everything was like on par. You know, she was gaining her weight and everything. So backstory, yes, there was a worry there. And so I also had to take antibiotics with Paige while being pregnant, because I had a UTI that was terrible, and I had to be taking antibiotics for a prolonged period of time. So that also, not coming from a medical background, I remember asking my gynecologist if it would affect my baby in any way, and his reply was no. And so I was like, okay, sure. So, but when we had Paige and she was growing up, we didn't particularly feel that there was anything different with her. It wasn't, I think, until we had our son Connor, and they are a year and they're 2 years apart.
Almost 2 years. Yeah, 2 years apart.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 years apart.
It wasn't until Connor was born we started seeing this regression in Paige's behavior. So I was confused between whether or not it was something to be concerned about, or if it had to do with the fact that Connor was here and maybe there was some jealousy and so on. But I would mention to you and tell you, you know, I'm noticing that she's not speaking as much, or I was worried about the tippy toes, because that was my major one.
Right.
And then there was one in particular that now, looking back in retrospect, no professional told me this. This is just me as a mom, that I feel now that those were the signs. One of them with her being, she would pull her belly button so hard, and she would kind of like pull it out as far as it could go, and she wouldn't cry. And I think you mentioned to me that, you know, well, that she could develop a hernia, but I would stop her from doing it, but she just would keep doing it.
Yeah.
So looking back now, those were the signs that something was different. And I know it's different for everybody, but yeah.
Now, as a male, I've never had and I'll never have a pregnancy. And we have had 3 pregnancies, 3 beautiful kids. Did something in each one of those pregnancies, was something different? Can you compare now, looking at the first, the second, and the third pregnancy? If you, as a woman, as a mother, can look at it and say, maybe looking back now, there are suspicions if I compare the three. What are similarities and differences with our other two kids who are not on the spectrum compared to Paige?
So I can only speak for me. And this might be pure coincidence. But there was a difference between the three of them. Each pregnancy was different. But if I were to compare Paige to the other two, there was something that stood out there. And during that pregnancy, there was very little movement. I couldn't really feel her. I would feel her every day, something very small. I would sometimes wonder if she's even there, if she's still alive. And I would mention that to you, like, hey, I think, like, I couldn't wait for the next follow-up visit to just check that everything was okay. But definitely the movement, she was not as busy as the other two pregnancies, especially in the third trimester, whereas the other two were like really moving round the clock. Yeah, so that was different. And with her, I just had a lot of Braxton Hicks.
Yeah.
So
Contractions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Constantly with her. Again, it could be nothing to do, but if you ask me if there was something different, those are the two things that I would say stood out.
Yeah. Is there a difficulty talking a little bit about our personal scenario, right? So you're married to a doctor. Of course, I'm not a gynecologist, right? But how can you relate and be straight up about it, right? Because it's not the same person who sits in an office taking care of people who are not his family. He's the professional. And then he has the role as the husband and the father. So was there a difficulty you felt that in my understanding what you were trying to get over to me? I mean, about the suspicion that you were having.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, because I felt you were very comfortable, not alarmed, very cool, calm, collected. And it could be because, well, maybe the obvious would be that you're in denial, but it could also be because, well, you know so much more and you didn't see enough to be concerned. I guess there's other reasons, but my difficulty in communicating to you was not really sure if you understood where I was coming from, what I was seeing. Because I do remember mentioning different things, like I said earlier, the tippy toes and even the hand flapping. And I remember twice mentioning that there's a lot of kids that experience these things that don't necessarily end up being diagnosed with autism or with anything, rather. So those are my difficulties, and I had to live through that, right? And still living through that with so many other things. When you have the health person so close to home, so close in your family, sometimes that objectivity is missing from things, and that's my point of view. I guess for people it could be different. Yeah.
I mean, it's not a secret that when we train in medical school, we're advised that we have to reach out to colleagues, to take care of our family, our close ones. And we're only supposed to, in an emergency situation, I mean, somebody is choking a piece of food, or we have to do CPR or something in an emergency situation, somebody's bleeding out, then we should act. None of that represented an emergency situation. I'll be honest with you too. I mean, there's a bit of denial because, like I said in the beginning, what if it happens to me? What if it happens to us? And you see so many difficult conditions that people have, so many difficult situations. To a certain extent, you have to be careful, because sometimes you can actually think that you're exempt from that when you're in those circles as the specialist. and you're seeing people on the other side, across the desk, across the table from you. But it was a very humbling experience for me because, yes, I was in denial. I was seeing things, but not wanting to see them, right? And knowing and hoping up to the point that we went to get the official diagnosis, because I can't diagnose her. I'm blinded at this point with emotions. Knowing inevitably that it was that, but just having to, can't be objective, being very subjective, very emotional, and realizing that, well, I had to step aside and allow another professional, another colleague to come into the equation and pinpoint exactly what that situation and what level of autism it was.
Well, it wasn't, yes, and I'm happy that you mentioned that there was some level of denial there. I agree with that statement. But just to give credit to you, I mean, it wasn't extreme. It wasn't on a limb, right? You weren't be like, no, it's not. You were always like in that little quiet thing saying, nah, it's nothing. I don't think, very quietly. But if I could remind you, when Connor came and it became more apparent, Paige was, we were doing potty training with her. And for the first time, I think a conversation that was initiated by you was you mentioning that you're concerned. You said, I'm concerned because I'm concerned about her, about the regression in the potty training. There was far more incidents. She was at times intentionally, at least that's what we feel, not going to the bathroom, just wanting to pee where she was. And that was the first time that I think on your own accord, you brought it up that I'm concerned. And I have that right here, remembering your concern.
It's an important thing you have to realize. I mean, you're a human being, right? And you also have another role as a spouse and a father. So correctly, you're not supposed to take the professional in the home setting. I mean, once you leave the office, you're no longer the doctor, the specialist, right? You're just the father and the husband. You're just another regular human being. I mean, because in the office, I think unfortunately a lot of people look at us and think we're godlike figures, which we're not. We're just fortunate to have the blessings, to have the intelligence and opportunity overall to be able to get these studies and to be able to help as much people as possible. Believe me, I look back and I think, what did I do wrong during the pregnancy? What did I do wrong before, right? Before or during the pregnancy or immediately after birth? Where did I feel as a father? Where did I feel as a spouse? But I know the answers. I mean, I know that I haven't been at fault in that sense. It's just a very human emotion that you look at it and you say, why me? But now we realize that it's a blessing for us, it's not a curse, it's a blessing.
Yeah. And that's interesting because when I connect with parents of autistic kids, that's the one thing that I think we all beat ourselves up and ask, what did we do or what did we not do? And science is evolving. And I'm hoping that eventually it could be that we know the cause or causes, right? But that's one thing that I hear a lot. What did I do? What did I not do? And I remember once my pediatrician, he told us, when I asked him, I said, I spoke about the antibiotics. I spoke about not taking my prenatal as I should, because of all the nausea and everything that I would have when I take the prenatal, the iron, whatever it was, the folic acid. And he mentioned, he was like, you did nothing. He's like, you did nothing. I know parents that did everything, that took the prenatal, that didn't have to drink antibiotics. And I still see them, they still have a child on the spectrum. And it was answer. It's like I got an answer, but I didn't get an answer. It was a happy, sad moment because I'm still left wanting to know why. So, yeah.
No, I said something. I said we actually look at the situation now as a blessing, and I'll tell you my opinion. Of our three kids, I think that Paige is the most affectionate because there's something I'm seeing a lot with her. She's daddy's girl. I don't think we have a discussion about that. And she comes running for kisses. She likes the hugs and the kisses. And in the beginning, she didn't want the hugs and the kisses. It was like, it's okay. It's okay, daddy. It's like, no. And now she's the one of the three that navigates especially to me, right? And wants my arms, wants my hugs, wants my kisses, wants my attention.
That's true.
It's like tickle here or scratch here, And I look at it, it's just her way of giving love, So it's been a quite a lesson for me because I look at it in that, as a professional, I unfortunately see a lot of kids who come in and they primarily come in with the mothers and perhaps the grandmothers or the aunt. And it's shameful, but you have to say it, that a lot of us men in society, we walk away from situations like that, whereby we have a kid that may be on the spectrum. Of course, as long as, because the mothers have all the power. I mean, in that if they allow the fathers to be around, right? And that's another topic for discussion, right? It is
a big one.
It's a big one, right? But I see it on a basis. I think just recently you told me about a conversation, somebody that you had a talk with, I think it was 2 days ago, that you spoke with this lady and, she wants to get some further help for her baby, her daughter. And she said the father is barely in the picture. It's like, it just gives a little something symbolic, And it's sad because, our mistakes as adults, let us say that, we've been in a previous relationship and there is a child that's involved. If the father has custody or the mother has custody, even if you're not with that person should not try to form a barrier with the child. Don't punish the child, because then the kids, they grow up and they're the ones that, they bear the brunt of the problems that the adults have, especially when the parents are no longer together.
Yeah, you mentioned that this has been a blessing to us, and you spoke about the kisses and the hugs of Paige. It goes beyond that, and now is a good time to talk about what our struggles after the diagnoses. I want to talk about that a bit because once we got the diagnoses, we got a very nice detailed report. She's a level 2. And there were many recommendations there, and we hit the ground running with those.
Well, let me say something before you continue, just for everybody to see how we can, we're accepting it, but we're putting like denial at the same time. So let me tell you what ran through my mind when I read the report. I was not in disagreement with anything that my expert colleague had to say, nothing. But there were some things that were okay, level 1, and some things were level 2, which overall makes it level 2. But I was reading the document, that detailed document, and I was like, I was trying to balance out how many things were level 1 and how many were level 2 to make my little Paige be a level 1. I mean,
looking for a justification for her to be a level 1.
I was looking, yes, in my mind, I was looking for the justification, knowing fully well that all the parameters that spoke about a level 2 in certain things made her a level 2. And I see that all the time in consultation. I see it too.
Which now she's due for a reevaluation. Because of all that we've done so far working with her. Because as I understand it, and you could correct me, that you can go, I guess, regressing or
progressing.
Okay, so
you can regress or you can progress. It all depends what you put in. What you put in is what you get out. And that's the reality of it. What helps these kids? Proper stimulation. If they're too hyper, you have to focus and bring them down. If they're too down, you have to like level them a bit up. It's all the things that are done is trying to find a balance to lead them forward so they can have a very good existence, a very good life.
Yeah. And so we've, like I said, we hit the ground running with all these things, all these recommendations that the doctor gave us. And since then, we've found some gaps in the system or in what's available out there to help kids like Paige. And so we did the therapies, we got her in school, and we're doing what we can at home with the reinforcement of whatever it is that is being recommended, like a small little example, and you see that she's still tippy-toeing. We still can't get her to do more flat, normal walking than tippy-toeing. I think it's kind of like half and a half. I don't know what you think.
Yes, because we have to be giving constant reminders. It's like Paige, and then she would start to with the instruction, and not always.
Yeah, not always.
If she's very excited, like an activity that she loves, she'll be tippy-toeing, and we have to, like you don't scream at her, but you have to say it loud enough to regulate her and for her to, the heels and the toes to walk like we should walk normally, not and just the tiptoes. I agree. And but I want to just say something very important, and it's important to say because this is a very human thing, right? So I remember my first interaction with the speech therapist, with the behavioral therapist, and with the occupational therapist. If I don't remember wrongly, I think it was the speech therapist we saw first. Am I right? Yes?
Yeah. Yes.
Right.
You're right.
So you go and you're seeing a colleague, but now you're on the other side of the fence. And the colleague does give you the respect that you deserve, but you don't need that. You don't need to be the doctor. You just, you don't walk around life expecting everybody to call you doctor. There, I'm just the mister, just the father of the child, right?
Yeah.
And I'll be very honest with you. It's just a human feeling, I think. There was a bit of shame, and I have to say it. And then now I look back and I'm like, ashamed of what, right? And I think it goes back to the question, what if it happens to me? What if it happens to us? And like I said, it did. But I do thank my colleague professional because she was on par. She sat down, she talked with us, and she gave us pointers that I didn't know everything that she talked about, but there were some things I knew. But it's like with my daughter's diagnosis, my mind went blank. And you may have noticed this, that you're asking me some things that afterwards I would come back and tell you, yes, but I have read this and I do know this, or I do recommend this, and you're looking at me like, but why haven't you said anything? Yeah. Because again, I'm the husband and the father in the home setting. I'm not the professional. I don't carry that over there. And I remember also, because I've known the behavioral therapist for quite a long time, for quite a number of years, and we'd always been having some sporadic level of cooperation, but we're having some cooperation. And then, now I come now as the father, right? And it's admiring the work that my colleagues do because it's no less important than the work that I do. Now, by the time the third person in the equation was the occupational therapist, by the time we engaged that person, all right, fine, and I already had the experience with the speech and the behavioral therapist, there wasn't that much of that feeling anymore. It's like, in other words, what I'm trying to say and for people to understand is that, yes, these sessions with these professionals last whatever, if it's 45 minutes, 50 minutes, an hour, right? And where the gaps can be is that after you leave there until the next session and what happens in between. And the feeling that you feel naked and you're starting to question yourself, do I have the capacity to do the recommendations that these experts recommended for us to do at home because now it's not like I can turn around and I have a therapist who is in my home 24/7, 365. That's unaffordable, right? That's unaffordable for anybody in our society. And now you have to go and you have to do your homework with your child at home. And that has been a hard experience. It's not been easy. It's not been an easy experience. And it's where I think, or I know, that we started to see that there's a gap.
Yeah.
The gap we've identified. Maybe like to shed some more light on it.